I'm going to have to not go back to my day job. I'm going to start my own business, and it's going to be about leadership, about changing the world. Haven't got it all figured out. That same month, Shannon, so literally that same month that I made that quite big life decision and had a bit of an aha moment around what I wanted to do, the Taliban took over in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all saw the footage on the news, and, you know, as a military veteran, like, it's heartbreaking to...
From the Grit Institute, this is the Grit Factor podcast. And I'm Shannon Huffman-Polson, former Apache helicopter pilot, speaker, and author of The Grit Factor, Courage, Resilience, and Leadership in the most male-dominated organization in the world. I'm also the founder of the Grit Institute, where I help purpose-driven leaders like you build grit and resilience and connect with purpose so that you can navigate transitions, overcome challenges, and lead with impact in your work for a better world. Welcome back to the Grit Factor, where we explore how purpose, leadership, and grit and resilience evolve beyond the uniform and across a life of service. Today's guest, Ellen Joan Ford, is a sister in arms, but also feels to me like the sister I wish I had, bringing us a deeply moving story of transformation, courage, and reinvention. Ellen served in the New Zealand Armed Forces for a decade on several continents, including deployments to Antarctica and Afghanistan. Leaving the military, she earned her PhD in organizational leadership and brought her award-winning expertise to a number of companies in the area of logistics. And then she received a call from a former teammate from Afghanistan. The Taliban had taken over, and they and their families were in danger. Ellen was nursing one of her 2 children at the time, but leapt back into action, putting together a team which worked tirelessly to ensure the safety of over 500 Afghans. Today, she's a mother of 2 boys, a leadership coach, and the founder of #WorkSchoolHours, advocating for work practices that honor both professional contribution and parenting. In this episode, we talk about the evolution of purpose and how it lies in service beyond titles and unfolds through our choices. Ellen's story is honest, courageous, and a testament to living with integrity and impact in and out of uniform. Let's take off. Welcome, Ellen. It's really wonderful to have you here. It's so good to meet you finally.
Oh, thank you too, Shannon. As I said before, I'm fangirling, so I'm very excited to be here.
It's a mutual admiration society for sure, always. You have such an incredible resume of experience and all that it is that you're doing in the world. And I know that we're only going to barely begin to touch on all of it. But I wondered if you could start with your experience as an officer in the New Zealand Army and talk a little bit about what brought you there and how that shaped you.
Yeah, sure. So I was lucky enough, I spent 10 years serving as an engineer officer. And Shannon, I loved it. There were so many, amazing experiences. I think I served for 10 years and I would have spent more than 7 of them outside of New Zealand. So lots of opportunities to experience other countries, serve in remote parts of the world. And I mean, it was just exciting, right? So many cool things that you get to do. And I decided, actually, it was when I was 10 years old. So like a little girl, I just saw this advertisement on TV. And it was a play on the words army and arm me. And it said things like, arm me with education, arm me with friends, arm me with experience. And then it finished with arm me with the future. And I was like, I'm going to join the army. And I did.
Oh, when you were 10, you knew this. Yes. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Especially as a young girl, to be honest. Like, I think that's not probably common in New Zealand or the US.
No, it's not at all. Like, I think my parents were like, that's interesting, but okay, Ellie. Yep. Well, thank you. And I was very determined. I was like, I'm going to join the army because I want to get all of those cool things. And I did. And it was great.
I love that. That's fantastic. So then how did that progress beyond 10? They didn't take you at 10 years old, I assume.
No, yes. That's a good point. So I finished school at 18, went straight into the army. And what was really neat is, so I did my undergraduate degree with them. It was just such a neat experience, like getting to do study, learn all my military skills. Spent a full year at the basically the Army Officer Academy. So, and I was very lucky, Shannon. I actually did mine as an exchange student in Australia. So I am New Zealand Army, but was actually spent all my training on a scholarship exchange in Australia. So that was super fun. And then when I graduated, got to lead soldiers doing some pretty cool construction tasks around New Zealand, but also some really neat ones overseas. So I got to go to Antarctica for 2 months.
Wow.
Which was just, incredible. And we actually worked with a whole lot of US Air Force people down there, which was really neat. Lots of stuff in the Pacific Islands. So New Zealand often goes into the Pacific when there's, say, a natural disaster. We'll go in and kind of do humanitarian aid and disaster relief. Served in Afghanistan, which was a massive highlight, and got to spend a bit of time on exchange in a few other places as well, including the UK. So, yes, in summary, It was super duper fun.
Well, and there's so many things I know that we could talk about in each one of those places. Maybe we could go to the place that most people are aware of, our engagements in the last several years in Afghanistan. Could talk about that experience there, and maybe a particular moment that that really stands out for you.
Yeah, sure. So I just felt like it was the pinnacle of my career. It was, the absolute goal to get deployed, operational deployment. And I was the engineer officer, so had a team of Kiwi soldiers, and we were responsible for basically all the construction of stuff within the Kiwi base that we were living on and the satellite bases. But we also got to do construction projects in the local community. And I loved that, getting to work on a local school. We did some stuff at a local orphanage, roading repairs. It was wonderful, Shannon. And I think one of the really meaningful and memorable moments was in my team, I had locals as well. So I had 5 New Zealand soldiers and 15 local guys. And so we were a team of 21. It wasn't like, the Kiwis and then the locals. It was 21. And I often say, Shannon, if you're in my team, I'm going to love you. And so they were a really big part of my experience and became a big part of my story 10 years after serving there, when things changed in Afghanistan in 2021. So I can come back to that. But
yes,
yeah.
No, we definitely have to come back to that. Well, but even at this moment, when you were integrating that team, your first experience with this group of people, that's a hard thing to do, especially as a woman in that culture, right? How did that work?
Yeah. So, and it's ended up, so many of my experiences, like you as well, Shannon, has kind of shaped, what I'm now doing and trying to talk about leadership. But I remember knowing quite early that because I was a woman, so, I just can't be like the rest of the men because I'm not one of them. And so I just need to be authentic to me. And I've always thought that if your people know that you care about them and if you're competent at your job, that's all they want to know is, does my boss care about me and are they competent at their job? And I don't think that they would care if I was a green alien from Mars. Like, they just want to know, am I competent? Do I care about them? And I did. I really cared about my team. And you're right, it was interesting. This is 15 Afghan men who are, Muslim, who live in a society where women basically don't work outside the home. And here they are with a foreign woman who is their leader. And it's funny, yes, there was obviously, a little bit of, I'd say teething or, kind of settling in, but it didn't take long until we just got on with it. And it's funny, it's so easy to think about all the differences between people. And, you think about literally like a Muslim man and a white Western New Zealand Army officer girl, kind of can't be more different. But actually, Shannon, we're just humans. And we would laugh together and, we just want to have, a nice life for our families. But I love the fact that there's this common thread of humanity, and I really just enjoyed getting to know them as awesome people.
Yeah. That's a really, really special thing that you have an opportunity to do in the military, I think, that is almost unmatched anywhere. It's not that you can't work with other team members and other cultures, but in the way that you do in that kind of intense environment in the military, it's unique, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And like when you
Yeah.
think about most jobs, you go home at the end of the day. Whereas when we're in
Right.
Afghanistan, obviously we're living over there for the entire time. And because our team, so we had the main Kiwi base, but we also had satellite bases around Bamiyan region.
Mm.
And so when we would go to one of the other bases and our local team members would come with us, then they would also be staying overnight with us. And we like, it's fun. I mean, it wasn't like we did kumbaya around a campfire. It was Afghanistan. It was an operational deployment. But, the guys, we would share meals together. In the
Yeah.
evenings when we'd finished our construction tasks, we literally did just sit around and tell jokes and share stories. And yeah,
It's great.
you wouldn't get that opportunity, I think, in many other walks of life. So I felt really, really, really lucky to have that opportunity to connect with these humans.
Yeah, what were some of the, just to give people an understanding, because I don't think people really understand what any of us do in the military unless they come from that background themselves. So what were some of the projects that you would do in Afghanistan with this mixed team?
Yeah, so the stuff kind of in camp. And I think one of the good examples would be if you think about, for people not in the military, the giant sandbags around the outside of the base. That was
Yes.
us. So effectively force protection. So making sure that there was a secure perimeter actually involved a lot of construction. And so that's what our team did. We were, engineers, so we built that. When we think about, we lived in kind of huts. So someone needed to actually build those huts and build the ablution blocks. So that was the engineered stuff that we did in the base. The stuff that we did out of the base, which honestly, Shannon, was just so much more fun, is we just got to do projects in the local community. So I remember one particularly special one was we did some work in a local orphanage.
Uh-huh.
And,
Wow.
it's just in many ways it's harrowing. Like it's just so sad. There's these, orphan children who, they have so little, they have nothing. And it's just amazing that there's these Afghan communities who are, running this orphanage and helping raise these little kids. And so we got to go in there and help. Oh my goodness, what was it we actually did? There was something with their water tanks that we were doing, and because I'm the engineer, the project manager, but I'm not actually a carpenter myself, so I don't know the exact specifics of it. But I ended up usually, Shannon, I'd be a hammer hand, or I'd be the person to just supply, lift the materials in. I wasn't the expert carpenter.
Yes. Well, the officers are the leaders or the managers, right? Essentially. So you're making sure that project gets done and people are taken care of. And often our people have much more expertise than we do.
Oh, absolutely, and I only ever experienced that. So that was a cool experience, by the way. So as an engineer, the soldiers in my team are carpenters, electricians, and plumbers, and I'm not. And I thought that was actually a really great experience to learn with leadership, knowing that the people in my team are more technically qualified than I am. And therefore, my role is actually to create an environment where they can do their best work. And my job is to do the planning and the foresight and manage their career paths and support them. And sometimes that would mean literally I'd just be a hammer hand, like they would be explaining to me what to do. But I loved that. It was quite a cool leadership experience just to know from the outset, my people are more technically expert at this than I am.
Well, and that is such a great seg into the corporate world too, right? Because I know when I went through business school and then went to the medical device companies and then into technology, I ran teams that were much, much more capable than I was at the technical aspects of a job. That was not what I was there to do. I was there to organize and do the visualization as you were as well, right? And to make things work and to support your people in doing their best work and to develop them. So that really segs very well into anything I think anybody in any leadership position would be able to relate to is you're there to make sure it gets done and to take care of the people so they can do their jobs.
Yes. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
love that. And I love
Yeah.
the fact that I got to learn from my team too. Like I feel like I now know a little bit more basic construction stuff than I did beforehand. So
That's very handy as well. That's very handy as
yes.
well. Yeah. Well, and so you transitioned also. I think we had similar tracks in some regards, but you transitioned as well out into the corporate sector and academia. Is that right?
Yes. So as I was coming out, I it's funny actually. I knew that I had really great skills that I learned from the army that are transferable outside, but I wanted to sort of pump up my CV a little bit. So I did my MBA, and that was a really good experience. It helped. I learned a bunch of useful things. It was great for networking actually, and it was a really cool thing to do as I came out. So I did my MBA as I was coming out of the army. I worked in a private sector for a couple of years, leading a logistics team in a big logistics company in New Zealand, and then went on to do business consulting. And it was while I was doing that, so I was working, but I had this really stupid idea, Shannon. I finished my MBA, and as part of it, you had to do like a mini thesis or a dissertation.
Okay.
And I got a really good grade. Now, I'm not saying that to brag, but I got an A plus. And so I
Excellent.
really stupidly thought, oh, I must be good at this research stuff. Maybe I should do some more of it. And decided to do my PhD, thinking, oh, it can't be that much harder.
Famous last words.
Oh my gosh, it was such a rude reality shock. It was so hard. So I did my PhD while I was working as a business consultant. And the PhD was on leadership because, again, that's kind of my fascination, having been a leader in the army, then in the corporate sector, and now basically working with business leaders, helping them with growing their business. I wanted to keep studying leadership because, I'm passionate about it.
That's fabulous. No, that's fabulous. And did you focus on women leaders in the New Zealand Army in that PhD program? Is that right?
Yes, you're exactly right.
Okay,
So
good.
I looked at, and basically it's because when you do a thesis, you have to narrow your topic. So I thought, okay, I'll make it about women. That kind of, narrows it to 50% of the population. And I looked at the leadership experiences of women across a whole lot of different sectors, but I did my case study on the military. And that was purely for pragmatic reasons. I had good access to people that I could interview. I obviously knew a bit about the topic. And completely honestly, when I started the process, it was more about this kind of personal challenge. I'd like to get this qualification, and this topic will sort of be the vehicle to get to that qualification that I want. And it was only when I gathered all the data and started analyzing it that I thought, oh my gosh, I actually give a shit about this. Like, I care. And this data is showing me that there's room for improvement, and I want to do something about it. So, yes, anyway.
No, that's fabulous. Well, tell us what did the data show you? What came out of that was maybe confirming your experience, or maybe added to that experience, or showed you something altogether new that you hadn't experienced in your own career?
Yeah, so and actually I'm interested because you'll have your own perspective on this as well, Shannon. But when I served, and people would say to me, this is people from outside the army, they'd say, Ellen, what's it like to be a woman in the army? Or what's it like to be a woman officer? And I was kind of a bit of a dick sometimes. I was like, no, there's nothing different. I'm just an officer. I'm just in the army. So basically I was just saying, I was almost a bit pig-headed about like, no, there's nothing different about being a woman. Don't like draw attention to it.
Sure.
And then when I left, did this research, interviewed all these women, it was actually kind of a really almost cathartic process for me, Shannon, because I got all these stories and was like, oh my gosh, that happened to me too. Oh, okay. I just like to pretend that challenge didn't exist. And I like to just pretend that nothing was different. And so the data revealed, and I'm always like, it's really important for me to share this, lots of positive stuff. So it wasn't like these women just had a whinge. There was, some of the things I just said, we got to have exciting adventures. We had amazing experiences. We got great training, education, amazing friendships, got to do cool things to help other people. So lots and lots of wonderfulness.
Yes.
But there was just also these recurring themes of negative experiences related to gender. And it did really make me reflect on my own times. And it hasn't ruined my memories. I'm still like really thrilled that I served in the army, and I'm really proud and grateful of it. But not everything was quite as sunshine and rainbows as I probably tricked myself into thinking it was.
Sure. But you also, I feel like, and maybe these are different experiences and maybe they're the same, but there was a bit of a party line too. You had to hold to, right? Like we all bleed green. We're all the same. We're all, and then at some point you're like, you know what? We're all performing. I'm expected and I perform at the same or a higher level than the people around me, but it's not the same experience at all. It really isn't, is it?
Yeah. You're so right.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it sort of gets indoctrinated because I don't even know that people are consciously doing it. So I'm also really careful to not sort of almost be accusatory that, they hoodwinked us and they tricked us into believing something, because I don't think that's true either. It was just, you just came to believe that this is, you're just a cog in the wheel of this big machine. And because as a woman, and I mean, I saw your class graduation photo. Holy moly, you're amazing. Front row, top honors student. I saw that and I was like, oh, I'm such a fan. But most of your cohort were men, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And I was the same. So I was the only engineer. Like literally, I had one female in my troop. The entire rest of the 40, 50 people during my time were men. I only ever had male bosses. I was the first female construction troop commander. So everything around you is men. And so you're so visible. And as actually, this is kind of one of the findings that came out, one of the themes, which you might relate to, Shannon, is that it was sort of like if a man made a mistake, it would be like, oh, that person, that individual made a mistake. Whereas if I made a mistake, it was, oh, woman.
Yes, exactly. There's a massive generalization all of a sudden, right? You stand for everybody.
Yes. And
Yes.
so I'm guessing that you might have had this experience, and correct me if I'm wrong, but all the women that I interviewed and my own experiences as well is that I always felt I had to be twice as good to be considered half as good. I always had to perform because I'm not just representing me, I'm representing women in the army. And I didn't even probably almost consciously have that, like it wasn't like I was really consciously thinking that, but subconsciously I definitely was.
Absolutely. I had the exact same experience. And I think most of the people that I interviewed for the Grit Factor, it was very much an understanding that simply being able to measure up is not enough, right? You absolutely have to exceed the standard. And that may even be held against you when you do that. That's the funniest thing, right? It's the expectation, but you may pay for it.
Yes. Like if I remember, and actually, I got along with pretty much, I like people, so it's very hard for me to not like someone. In fact,
I can tell.
And if someone doesn't like me, Shannon, I just try harder. I'm like, oh, but I really want you to like me, so I'm going to really try to be nice. But I remember there was this one guy who was my peer who just didn't like me, and that bothered me. I was like, why does he not like me? And it just came down to the fact that I was more competent than him. Like he just hated the fact that here was this woman who was performing better than him. And like it's not like he would have minded about some of the men who were performing better than him, but it was this real, like it was almost like it made him feel less than as a man because here's this woman performing better than him. And I don't just mean the academic stuff. I mean, physically I performed better than him as well. And it was kind of, it made me less likable to him.
Yes, I know. It's an unfortunate part of the experience. And you do get to this place where you realize, and I think this is part of the growing up process as well, and it's part of leadership, but it's not the fun part, which is that there's going to be people that don't like you, and there's going to be people that even hate you, and there's going to be people that betray you, and there's going to be people that undermine you, and not necessarily for any reason at all. And having to almost accept that and just let that go, I still struggle with that, to be honest.
Yeah, actually, same, Shannon, at exactly that point you just said about undermining or betraying. And I, have had those experiences, as everybody has. But it would really bother me. I'm like, I don't understand. I didn't even do anything to be unkind to that person. Like, why are they that set on trying to make me look foolish in front of, the team or.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it was, again, a big thing in growing up. And I haven't quite grown up properly yet, Shannon. I still want people to like me. It's still something I'm really working on. But you're right, not Not everyone is going to like us, and that's quite hard to accept.
It is, and it's the human condition, right? And I think it's particularly the human condition for women, and that is an interesting thing to at least acknowledge and can come to terms with for oneself, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's fabulous work, and it's just really interesting, isn't it? How once we do this additional work beyond our own experience, and I had the same experience writing The Grit Factor, where there were a number of things that were good and bad, but some of it was like, I'm not the only one. I felt like the only one all of the time, but there were all of these other people that were either there before me or there at the same time that I didn't know or there after. And we have this shared, and you now, right? And this shared experience that really, I think is another way to go back and understand my own experience. And you can understand yours, I'm sure, differently now with this additional research.
Absolutely, Shannon. And I wasn't, maybe naively or stupidly of me, I wasn't expecting that. I was like, cool, I'm going to do this study, get this qualification, I'm going to interview other people. But it absolutely massively shaped my own understanding of my own experience. And I have to say, it also allowed me to grieve a little bit.
Yes.
I realized, so one of the topics, and I'll move past this quickly because I don't want to.
No, this is important. This is important.
But, one of the themes of the challenges that women experience, which won't surprise you, Shannon, was sexual harm.
Yes.
Right? Like, that's not a surprise. That was one of the themes. And I had spent my entire career thinking, oh, I'm very lucky that never happened to me. It was only when I interviewed other women and they shared their stories, which was very generous of them. I then actually felt this real duty, almost a bit of a burden, but in a privileged way, that I've been honored to get this information. And then I felt compelled. I was like, well, I had to do something with it. I had to do something to make things better. But on the sexual harm one, which again, I always thought, oh, I'm lucky that never happened to me. It took me 10 years of military service, several years out of the military, researching other people to then realize, oh my goodness, that did happen to me. That did happen. And I somehow had, I don't know, done some weird gymnastics in my brain to be like, no, but that was kind of my own fault, or that didn't count, or minimized it. And realized, no, that did happen, and that was not okay. And how on earth was I socialized to think that that was acceptable?
Right. Or so determined to do well and not have that define your experience, right? Yeah. I think that's a big piece is especially for people who are high performers. I will say my own experience in that arena, which I have not really talked about. I've written about in some other more literary publications, but you realize that you've worked so hard and you've done such exceptional work and you've been recognized for that exceptional work. And if you let something else like that come into the frame, then that will, for others, define what your military experience was. And I refuse to let that happen. But in doing that, you can do some self-harm, can't you, in not acknowledging that?
Yes. It's almost like it was, actually, you've really explained it well there, like almost this kind of identity clash. Like, yeah, I've worked my butt off. I was proud of the fact that I got selected for these overseas deployments. And I didn't just, serve and be average. Like, I was a high performer, as obviously you were. And I don't, even it's weird, I feel still uncomfortable saying that. Like, I had to almost justify it. But just, yeah, so if I'm just honest with myself, I was a high performer. I did well in the military. And so that identity that I had of myself does not match with an identity of someone who experienced some harmful behavior because of my gender.
Yes.
But I guess I'm starting to learn, or could kind of grieve, that two things can be true. So
yes,
I am that
absolutely.
high performer. And also some pretty shit things happened that were not okay. And I'm gonna process them in my own way. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't the successful person. So
exactly. And also, of course, it's important to note on this show, and I know that we agree on this too, that it doesn't matter whether or not you're a high performer. This is completely unacceptable behavior, but it is hard for us to acknowledge it, I think, regardless, and to let ourselves heal from that if we don't take that time and we can't be honest with that piece of the experience as well, right?
Yeah. And there was so just what, I don't want to get all weird on this, but I almost feel like something was driving me to do this research for my own healing. And I never started it for that purpose. Not at all. Like, it was the surprise that happened to me But then part of me is like, well, of course you needed that, Ellen. Like almost, of course you needed that. So I don't know. Sometimes I think things work in mysterious ways, but it was helpful for me.
I do want to talk about that actually relative to purpose in just a little bit, because I think there's something to that drives us internally to something that is not just meaningful, but maybe where we're meant to be and how we're meant to contribute in the world. And actually, maybe let's just go right to that because you have this framework. You have this framework for leadership that is belonging, autonomy, purpose, and leadership. And I feel like that purpose piece is a really critical component that is not as straightforward as we sometimes like to pretend that it is. And I'd love you to talk us through the framework in general, and then let's also get a little bit into whether this might be an example of purpose in your case, and maybe how others can use that reference for themselves as well.
Oh, Shannon, I love the way you've tied that in. Yes, that's okay. Yes. So
Good.
it would have been, gosh, about 3.5 years ago. I was on parental leave second time round. So I've got two little boys, 7 and 4. And Monty was still a baby. I was breastfeeding. Toby was 3. And I was kind of marinating on a lot of this research. So some of it was the one I've just talked about, the PhD in the military research. I'd also done some postdoctoral research on the experiences of working parents, and I can get to that a bit later as well. But basically, the data was unsatisfactory to me. It was, people are having experiences that I don't think are okay, and I think they need to be better. I was like, doesn't need to be like this. And so I remember thinking, well, shit, I'm going to have to do something about this. I'm going to have to try and change the world. And
this is this engineer brain. This engineer overachiever is going to engineer this. I love it. I love it, Ellen. It's good.
It's funny, actually. Like I say this sometimes, and I know it's ridiculous, but my phrase, Shannon, I say I am terrifyingly ambitious about trying to change the working world.
Excellent.
And I know how kind of silly that sounds, but I mean it. Like I have these huge expectations about how the world can be better. And so I've kind of just I feel like I found my own purpose. I think about I've all these experiences, military, academic, corporate sector, becoming a parent, all of this stuff has kind of, in my mind, led me to what I'm doing now. Like I feel like I'm living my purpose. So I can talk more on that. But at this time, so 3.5 years ago, parental leave was like, right, I'm going to have to try and change the world. I'm going to start my own business, which is freaking terrifying. I've always got a salary, so this is quite scary. And I knew I had something to do with leadership. And so it was at that time that so there was the stuff around working parents, which I'll get to soon. But I thought about it. I was like, what is this? What is it that leaders are meant to do? And I mean, you basically said it before, Shannon. So I think that leaders are meant to create an environment for their people to thrive and then direct that thriving energy at whatever it is that needs to be achieved.
And you know what, Ellen? We usually talk about it as one or the other, but not both. And it has to be both, doesn't it?
Yes.
The vision and the support and the enablement of great work. Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I love that you said that. Yeah, so it's not just create an environment where your people are happy and nothing. No, you've got to direct it to the stuff that actually needs to get done. But in order for them to do that great work, they need to thrive. And so then I was thinking back my research journey and my experiences. I was like, what is it that people need to thrive? And I believe that they need the 3 things, which is belonging, autonomy, and purpose. And so very briefly, so belonging, and I'm a big fan of Brené Brown, which probably isn't shocking.
Yes, of course.
She talks about the difference between fitting in and belonging. And so fitting in is when you show up and you kind of feel like you have to adjust yourself, put on a bit of a mask, act a certain way, conduct yourself a little bit differently in order to fit in. But belonging is when you can just show up as your whole, full, authentic, unique, little bit weird self and like actually feel that you're truly valued and welcome and included there. Like that's belonging. And so I know through, again, all these experiences and research is that people can do so much better work when they have that feeling of belonging because they can relax and they can actually use the energy to think of better solutions or challenge things if they're not working properly. Whereas we're just fitting in, we're on guard all the time. It's exhausting and we never do our best work. So I think belonging is one of the things we need to thrive. The second thing that we need is a sense of autonomy. So, how no one likes to be micromanaged, but one of the kind of the starting point for me on the autonomy was some of the challenges that working parents were having. I was like, we just need flexibility. I can do my work. I just need a bit of flexibility. I'm going to juggle it around my kids. So 9 to 5 is not actually very useful for me because my kids finish school at 3:00. So this autonomy piece is around basically having some agency over how you do your tasks and when and where you do your tasks. So that's autonomy. Sorry, I'll shut up in a sec.
No, this is great. This is great. I love it. And you're so on target and I want to go in so many directions here. So keep going.
Yay. So what do we need to thrive? We need belonging, we need autonomy, and the third one is purpose.
If you've been asking yourself, what's the point of all of this? Not just in your job, but in your life, you're not alone. Most high achievers I work with aren't lacking drive. They're lacking direction that actually matters. That's why I built Leading with Purpose at the Grit Institute. It's a step-by-step path to reconnect with what drives you, leads you, and sustains you, especially when things get hard. If you're tired of just checking boxes and you're ready to lead with intention, go to thegritinstitute.com/purpose/ and start Leading with Purpose today.
And I think this they're interrelated, but I almost describe it as two different parts of purpose. So we need to know that what we do matters. And so whenever we're being asked to do something, we need to know why. And from the military, gosh, we've certainly got experience of doing tasks that aren't very fun, in the middle of the night when it's pouring with rain and it's not that enjoyable. But if we know why we're doing it, we'll actually do it. I think people are quite capable of doing not particularly fun tasks when they know the why. But it's so demotivating to be like, yes, I had to write this report. I don't know why. I don't think anyone even reads it. Like it's, so the why.
So true.
Yeah. So I think we need to know if we're being asked to do something, what's its purpose? Why are we doing that? And I think the other thing around purpose is that whatever the organization's overall purpose is, the people within that organization need to feel that they can align to it. So if the purpose is, let's make as much money for our shareholders, I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I'm just acknowledging that the people who work for you probably don't really think that that's their driving purpose. So
yes.
We've got to find a purpose that the people in the team can be like, yeah, I can align to that purpose, and how we align and how we apply it will all be a little bit unique to our own drivers. But we need to have alignment of what that organizational purpose is if we're going to do our best work.
Ellen, this is amazing. It's great. There's two things this is making me think of. The first is that we also have 2 boys, by the way, who are just a little older than yours. So yet another thing we have in common, which I love. But one of the positive parenting ideas is that children need, like we all need, I would say, belonging and significance. Like those are the 2 things. And if there's something amiss, they are either not feeling like they belong or that they have significance. And so I have always felt that applies to every single one of us. It applies to ourselves. It applies to the people that work with or for us, is that belonging and significance. And the second part, though, because I love that you included autonomy in this, there was a wonderful article in The Atlantic actually about some of the challenges that youth are having now kind of across the Western world. And the 2 things that were missing, according to the author, were hope and agency. And she said, if you have hope and you have agency, you can do anything. That's where the resilience can come in and kick in, the grit factor, like I like to call it, right? And I think, in fact, the article's title was The Resilience Gap. So hope and agency. So that autonomy piece is really critical to us, I think, feeling a full sense of that significance, right? Or that purpose ultimately is knowing that we can move towards that in a meaningful way.
Shannon, I love that. And look, the trick, I've just picked those words, belonging, autonomy, and purpose, because they kind of capture or, soak up the stuff that I'm trying to say. But I think the point you made about significance and about hope, I think all of this, they're very aligned. This isn't like a different concept. It's, that I can totally see how that makes sense in this context.
Sure. Yeah. No, well, I mean, and it's important. I think the research all supports all of this, but also your experience as a working parent, right? And your experience in the military, and our combined and collective experiences struggling in the world as it continues to evolve very rapidly, help to really pull out those critical pieces of research and say, okay, this is now the framework that you can take into the world.
Yes, I find it, I think sometimes it is useful if you can kind of boil it down to, I don't know if the word model is the right word, but sometimes to have a model or a few words or a framework is a useful way to simplify a complex idea. If we can simplify it, that makes it easier to then go out and apply it to help people, move forward and have success or progress in this area. So yeah, I like
True.
that.
Well, let's come back to your purpose, because you've noted that you've had these many diverse experiences, really just incredible, intense experiences that have led you to what you now understand as your purpose. How would you describe your understanding of that? Was it kind of an aha moment, or was it this a general evolution of these ideas? How did you come to this understanding of where you are now?
So actually, would it be all right if now there was one more story I wanted to share with you about
Absolutely.
the Afghan team that I worked with in Afghanistan, and then
Yes.
the connection 10 years later?
Yes, please, because we were going to come to that, and this is a perfect time to bring it up.
Yay, because I think that story will actually answer that question of this aha moment. So I said it was about 3.5 years ago. So it was August 2021. I had a baby and a 3-year-old. I had just decided, Shannon, I'm frustrated with all this data that I've collected. Work's not as good as it could be. It's something to do with leadership. It's something to do with belonging, autonomy, purpose. Started the movement called #WorkSchoolHours. That's another discussion. And I thought, right, I'm going to have to not go back to my day job. I'm going to start my own business. And it's going to be about leadership, about changing the world. Haven't got it all figured out. That same month, Shannon, so literally that same month that I made that quite big life decision and had a bit of an aha moment around what I wanted to do, the Taliban took over in Afghanistan. And I mean, we all saw the footage on the news, and, as a military veteran, like, it's heartbreaking to see, so many of us served over there. We lost comrades over there, and it's all gone backwards. But the thing that I was most worried about was those guys who'd been in my team. Because as you know, basically anyone who had worked for a foreign government or foreign defence force was at risk. And so that month, one of the guys, Shannon, who had been in my team, he reached out to me. And he literally said that him and his family had escaped their home. They were living in hiding in fear of their lives. They were desperate. Please, could I help? And I just, I really remember this, Shannon. I was like, I've got a baby. I've got a 3-year-old. I've just started a business. I have absolutely no idea. I'm on the other side of the world. I don't know what on earth I can do to help. But, yeah, of course I will. I'll do whatever I can. And it just snowballed, Shannon, in a couple of days. And I hadn't intended to do this. So this is about, sometimes you're where you're meant to be.
Yes.
It went from helping this one family to it was about 50 or 60 families. So there was the 15 guys from my own team, but there was other locals who did stuff for other teams within the New Zealand Defence Force. And then when you add in their wives and their children, I suddenly found myself advocating for several hundred people. And again, I didn't set out to be in this position. And I remember our government, and I think yours did very similar stuff, Shannon, we sort of said, yep, we acknowledge the fact that these people are at risk because they worked for us. We will therefore bring them out of Afghanistan to, our respective countries. And so, America, we all saw those just horrible footage on the news, people clambering onto plane wings trying to get out of that place. And so our Defence Force did a great job. We did 2 evacuation flights, and we got out some New Zealand, I say we, the Defence Force, which I was not part of anymore, permanent residents and some citizens, but that Kabul airport was bombed. And so for New Zealand, that meant those evacuation flights, they were cut short. And so not a single one of these locals got out. Like every single one of them is still stuck in Afghanistan. And I just remember thinking, like, shit. So I thought, okay, well, if these people are going to have any chance of getting to New Zealand at some point, they need to have the right visas. So I know that sounds very almost paperworky, but it is. I thought, if they're ever going to get here, they need to have a properly documented New Zealand visa to be entitled to come here. And so I had 3 Afghan interpreter friends who were already living in New Zealand, and the 4 of us, all via Zoom, because it was a pandemic at the time, so we're in lockdown as well. Half the world's in lockdown because of the pandemic.
Yes.
So we, from literally just messaging apps on our phones, were on video calls, the 4 of us, and we spent, it was almost a month, working like night after night till sort of 2, 3 in the morning, effectively compiling. It was very tedious, but we were compiling basically visa application files for every single one of these several hundred people. And it took, you can just imagine, like, you're trying to gather birth certificates, ID cards, and of course, that kind of stuff in Afghanistan is not done with the same level of rigor as it is in New Zealand. These people have escaped from home. It's not like they've got just everything handy with them. And so, yeah, it was really quite tricky to get all this basically paperwork. But we got there, Shannon. So after a month, we got visas issued by the New Zealand government for 563 people. That was everyone on our list, 563. And so I can pause if you want to pause me, or I'll keep going.
No, this is incredible. And actually, that just gives me the hives to think of that much paperwork. To do it for one person is overwhelming, right? But this is absolutely incredible.
It was like, again, and it's not sexy. It's not like, fun action stuff. Like this was tedious going through documents after document. And you're right, every single application was hours of work. And, we did together, and there was a lot. So hundreds of these things. But I remember after this month, I was like, great, we've got all the paperwork, but I have no idea how to get them out of that country. Like, cool, they've got the paperwork, which is needed, but they're still stuck there. And I remember, like, I was beside myself, Shannon. I had lost about 10 kilos. I was barely eating, barely sleeping. I was still trying to breastfeed my baby. It was hard. But I think about, there was this really magical week, Shannon, where 3 different guys reached out to me. These were all military or ex-military guys. They had seen me advocating in the New Zealand media for these families. And so they reached out to me, and I just talked to them all individually. And I was like, oh my goodness, they know some things I don't. They've got some connections, some experience, some expertise, some knowledge that I don't have. So I basically pretty much begged them. I was like, we're going to be a team. So I got us all on a Zoom call, the 4 of us. And I remember this, it was 9:00 at night because we're in different time zones. I was in a dressing gown. I was breastfeeding Monty. So I've got Monty on the boob, and I'm literally coordinating this Zoom meeting with the 4 of us sort of military affiliated people. And it went from this state of despair to this little glimmer of optimism. Maybe, if we actually worked together, and we were quite different, it was really neat, actually. We had really different experiences, very different personalities, but it was maybe if we work together, we can do something. And this is a very long story, but to make it short,
it's an important one. It's a spectacular story. I'm so glad you're sharing this.
We realized very quickly that, we can't just do it ourselves as 4 random volunteers. We needed to work with the government. But what we also knew is that our government actually needed a bit of help because, there's no policy document in place for how do you deal with this. How do you extract people from Afghanistan that is Taliban controlled and that's the middle of a global pandemic, and there are no government officials on the ground in Afghanistan? There's no policy document in place for how do you do that.
Sure.
And because we had all served there, and we still had connections and we knew stuff, we actually knew that we could add a bit of value to the government team. And we also knew that we needed them because this was going to involve, cooperating with third countries that were neighboring Afghanistan. Like, this was a big beast. And so it wasn't quite as simple as just knocking on the government door and saying, hi, like, we're here to help. Let's do this together. We kind of used the media. Yeah. So one of our, New Zealand doesn't have a lot of different news stations, but it was called the Sunday program, which was kind of like our biggest sort of serious current affairs type show. They were amazing. They did a story on what our team were trying to do. And it did the trick. So literally our Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade, and that was the lead government agency, she literally said on national television, my department will work with Ellen and her team.
Oh my goodness.
And they did. It was like, I kind of feel like this is a bit of a historic example of genuine collaboration between a government department and private volunteers. And because it was just such uncharted territory, we were all making it up as we go along and figuring it out. But this wasn't a quick task. It took almost a year. So, months. We were all just working together. We had, the media people played a role. We managed to get a whole lot of Kiwis to donate money to fund the evacuation costs. We had our Afghan interpreter friends who were absolutely critical to this. There were other advocates beyond our team, the government officials. It was just this incredible example of people just working on this common purpose. So to this purpose bit.
Yes.
And slowly but surely, we did it. So Shannon, every single one of those 563 people are now in New Zealand.
That's incredible. My gosh. I mean, it's astonishing, really, isn't it? It's just spectacular.
Well, the interesting thing, so when I was in the thick of it, Shannon, I was just literally running on adrenaline. It was just so surreal. Here I am, I'm just a mum. I'm just a mum. I'm breastfeeding a baby. I'm trying to start a business. I've got a 3-year-old. And I'm at the heart of this volunteer evacuation operation of people from the other side of the world. It's just bizarre. But at the end of it, I did reflect with my teammates. I was like, how did we do this? How on earth? And I realized, Shannon, it was quite cathartic. I wrote this very short article, which I'm happy to share with you, with your listeners. And it was just it was like the 9 leadership and teamwork lessons to come out of this evacuation task. And actually, I'm very glad. I just want to say this one because it makes me feel good. The 9th one in this list of lessons is never underestimate the ability of someone with a baby.
I love that.
How often?
Excellent.
Yeah. How often do we just think, oh, yeah, they're just a mum? No, I did most of my media interviews because a lot of this was in the media, and I would breastfeed Monty because the best way to calm a baby so that you can actually concentrate and talk is to put him on the boob. And I remember the camera operator was like, oh, no, we'll crop him out. And I was like, no, don't. I mean, obviously, there was nothing flashing. It was all very fine. But I was like, no, don't crop him out. I am a breastfeeding mother. And I'm involved in this. And don't think that those two are mutually exclusive. So
Yes. That is, there are about 25 different incredible aspects of that story. That's really amazing. And so obviously, and I know we don't have as much time to go into all of the different pieces of it, but I do want to come around to how that purpose, in a sense, it found you. Yes. And then how does that purpose continue to evolve as you move forward once it's done? Because that can also be a hard thing sometimes, can't it?
Yes. So this is where, reflecting on the teammates, how on earth did we did this? Wrote this wee article, which is just partly for my own kind of, mental health, actually, just to kind of process it all. But then I was like, holy dooly, this is my best case study to prove that this leadership model I bang on about, belonging, autonomy, purpose, it works. Because we had all of those 3 things, and I talk about it in the story. I had a sense of belonging. My team saw me in tears, in a dressing gown, breastfeeding a baby, swearing because I was pissed off that things weren't working fast enough. And never made me feel ashamed of that or less than. And feeling that full sense of belonging meant I could bring my A game. That meant I could bring the best of me. Autonomy, I talk a lot about how do we support working parents more, give them more flexibility. I had autonomy because it wasn't ever like, hey team, these are the hours we're going to work on this. It was only ever, these are the outputs we have agreed to each other that we're going to do. So that, and then the purpose one was just, that's pretty obvious, right? Like we had a really clear purpose, get these people out of Afghanistan and manage to get all these other people to join up. And so what I realized at the end of that journey, and this was my aha moment. So sorry, long way around to your question of how did I find my purpose?
Terrific.
So I already had started it. I'd already, the same month that this task kicked off, I'd already decided I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to push belonging, autonomy, purpose, leadership. I'm going to push this principles-based idea called #WorkSchoolHours. That's all about giving people flexibility, focusing on outputs. And then I did this task, like this holy dolly, this big chunk of 1 year of life. And the epiphany, Shannon, was I had this moment of thinking, I don't know how we did that. Like, that's a miracle. And it's a great case study for the stuff works. But it almost gave me this terrifying, I say it before, I'm terrifyingly ambitious. It gave me this kind of, and I don't mean it from an arrogant point of view. So if I come across that way, I apologize. But I was almost like, well, I did that. Why the heck shouldn't I be able to change the world?
Yes.
And I know that's kind of silly, but I don't even know how I could have done that, but I did. And I'm just a normal person. Like, that's it. I'm just a normal person and I cared. I really cared about these people, and anyone else could have done the same thing that I did. Like, it was extraordinary, but also we're just ordinary people. And so I thought, well, if I was involved in that kind of miraculous task, again, with so many other people, like, I'm really clear, it wasn't just the Ellen show, like, it was so many people. But then I thought, well, why can't I be as audacious as to think I can change the working world? And I can't do it by myself, but I think I can do it with other people. And so that was sort of this moment of, I found my purpose. I want to make the working world better. I want people to have better experiences, and more of a sense of belonging, autonomy, and purpose. I want to push this idea of #WorkSchoolHours, which is my book. And I want to change the working world. And I feel like, well, why not?
Why not? Exactly. And the reality is, Ellen, yes, I love that you are humble enough to say you're just a regular person, and all of us are just regular people. And that's important for people to hear. It's also true that most people don't do those things. And so what do you think it is about you? What inspires that grit factor in you that makes you take on those things that need to be done? I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, part of this is leadership is, and unfortunately we're lacking quite a bit of that around the world in both corporate and political spheres, is doing what needs to be done and doing it in a way that takes care of people as well. And what is it about you that you think gives you that grit factor that's willing to do what needs to be done and take care of people while you're doing it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Shannon. I love that you brought it back to the grit factor and the Grit Institute, because I just really applaud that. I mean, I love it. I just think, this grit factor, that's what we need, is people just to get stuff done. So
you've got it, Ellen. So you're you've got it.
It's funny because, there are so many things in the world that you could get on board with and try and change. And I'm not trying, there's thousands of problems out there, and I'm not trying to tackle all of them. But I feel, actually, I remember reading in a book, Untamed. I've just forgotten the author's name, sorry. She's brilliant, married to the famous soccer player. Anyway, the book's called Untamed. Glennon Doyle.
Glennon Doyle. Yes, of course. Yes.
Yeah. So she, there was a bit in her book that she read, something about the fact that often people, their heart feels something about a certain tragedy in the world. And often we teach ourselves, well, we'll just look away to protect ourselves. Like, don't look too closely because it's going to hurt us. And she wrote in this, and I read this after I'd done this task, but she was like, don't turn away. Like, find that bit that your heart just draws you to, and then go there and do something about it. And I feel like, so again, I think she wrote it better than I'm explaining it. But I feel like that's kind of been my theme in life. Like when I did this PhD research and realized that women weren't being treated as well as they could, I was like, I care about that. So I literally, like, I knocked on the chief of the army's door and I was like, you need to hear this research and we're going to do something about it. And then when I was frustrated that working parents weren't getting a good deal, I was like, right, well, I'm going to start this hashtag work school hours movement. And then same thing, when these Afghan guys reached out to me, I was like, well, I can't walk away. And I know I could have done, but I don't know, I cared about them. And, the other thing actually, because I don't want to make out like I'm some lovely person, there was a bit of me, Shannon, that was like, I'll feel guilty. Like, it will haunt me if some of these people die, which they would have done. Like, I have no doubt whatsoever that some of these people would have been
saved
killed.
their lives. You probably saved all of their lives. I mean, truly, that's how bad it is over there.
It is. It's harrowing. And even if the Taliban didn't kill them, none of those girls would have been able to go to school. They probably would have been married off to, just the atrocities that would have happened to them. So there was part of me that thought, if one of them dies, and by one, many, and I can't look myself in the mirror and say I did everything I possibly could have done, I think that would have eaten me alive. So, if I'm honest, some of it I did to almost make sure my own conscience was okay. So that's
that goes to one of the things that we talk about with purpose at the Grit Institute is what breaks your heart, right? And what breaks your heart, and this is maybe what Glennon Doyle is saying and what you are saying, is what breaks your heart might be that pull to that thing that is your purpose, right? You're seeing this now with working parents, and you're saying that does break my heart. I'm feeling it myself, but I also know this is affecting so many people and I can do something about it. So that's the pull to your purpose. And I think that's a beautiful way of saying it, Ellen. I'm really so grateful that you put it that way.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I'd like the way you said it. Yeah, the heartbreak, and go there.
Yeah, and go there, right? And that's maybe what we're meant to be doing in the world. 2 more questions for you. What would you tell a young Ellen, 21 years old, knowing what you know now?
Oh, that's a good one. Actually, I was asked this not that long ago as well. So I would say to Ellen, you got this. You got this, girl. Just believe in yourself. You can do this. Yeah,
perfect.
That's what I'd tell young Ellen.
Good. And then how do you define success at this point in your life after all of the experiences that you've had so far? And I know you're still in the midst of them. So
I think success is about like you've got different facets in life. So my professional career is a big important thing for me. Being a mum is a big important thing for me. Being a family member to my parents and my brother, being a friend, and being all these things. I've got lots of stuff happening in life. So for me, success is feeling like I'm never winning in all fields at one time. Like, that's, unrealistic to say that I am. But success for me is feeling like I'm having some progress or some achievement in all of those spheres. So if I was just kicking goals professionally, but never seeing my kids, I wouldn't see that as success.
Fantastic. I think that multifaceted piece is so important. And as we get older in the sense that, not that we're aged yet, but the idea that, and I think of this as this Polaris principle of purpose, that there's not one North Star, there are actually 3 stars that form the one star that we see. And I think that there are varying brightnesses, and at some point it won't be Polaris anyway, it'll be some other star in thousands and thousands of years as the Earth changes on its axis. So if there were 3 different pieces that sort of made up your purpose now, it seems like you have your work, you have your family. Is there something else that is the other piece of that Polaris for you?
Actually, I'd say it's my own internal journey of knowing myself and figuring out. Spiritual isn't necessarily a word that I would use, but I think it actually probably is the word. It's kind of this internal stuff, like, I don't know, understanding that there's something bigger than us, connecting it with, who I am. Yeah, I think that's probably the third thing. So work, family, and then make an internal journey.
That's excellent. Yeah, for me, I think of it as a spiritual element as well. And I think that's important, however it is that you define that, right? That's an important piece to make that space for, make that time for. So Ellen, this is the first of many conversations, I know for sure. I'm so grateful you shared your experiences, your life, your heart, and your incredible wisdom with this audience. So thank you so much for being on The Grit Factor.
Shannon, thank you so very much for having me. Can I add one more thing? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Right, so I promise you, this is not a sales pitch. So I published this book last year, which is called #All Hours.
Well, I will definitely have that linked.
I've got some of the stuff about the Afghan evacuation story. But Shannon, my goal was not to sell books. I want people to access the content. So before we did this, I set up a code. It's GRIT100, because grit's your, so GRIT100. If anyone in your network puts the code GRIT100, you can have a free ebook.
My goodness. Okay. Fantastic. I like to say that people should also order books because you should support the good work that the authors have done. So we'll also have links for that in the show notes as well. And I will put that on my my bookshop page. So.
I mean, yeah, sure. Buy the book. That would be lovely. But actually, I just want people to have the content because I know that it's good. So I just thought if I can make it free, it's more accessible.
Perfect. And how can people find you online?
Oh, so my website is my name, so ellenjoanford.com.
Perfect.
And I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram with the handle Dr. Ellen Joan Ford.
Perfect. Ellen, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Ellen Joan Ford as much as I did. Her journey has been a powerful one and continues to be. From leading in the New Zealand Armed Forces to showing up when Afghan civilians needed her the most, raising 2 boys, and advocating for systemic change in workplace parent norms, as well as documenting and helping to change women's military experiences through her work and her PhD. She reminds us that purpose doesn't end, it just transforms, and that leadership often begins again when we answer the question, what does the world need from me now? To learn more about Ellen's work and mission, visit ellenjoanford.com and download her #WorkSchoolHours checklist at her website. Whether you're navigating transition or redefining your next chapter, her story is sure to inspire, empower, and direct you. Until next time, keep showing up with grit, purpose, and heart. If you have a moment, please make sure that you've subscribed, forward this to a friend, and drop in a review. It makes a big difference to the success of the show and helps others find it.